Ray Clay. You might not know his name, but I can almost guarantee you know his voice, especially if you were an NBA fan growing up in the 90s. You knew exactly what time it was whenever the lights went out in the arena. Ray Clay is a PA announcer best known for his work with the Chicago Bulls in the 1990s, and was there for all 6 titles the Bulls won with MJ. You see, the man made announcing the starting lineups a special event in and of itself, which led to other opportunities as a result. He guest starred in a 1993 episode of the sitcom Married with Children, and had roles in the films Blink and He Got Game. His voice also appeared in several basketball video games. Without question, he was one of the best at what he did.
What I try to do is just add a little twist of my own to the game.
Joey Kukoc, down it!
I like the individual play. I'm sort of a highlight guy.
Here comes Superman, Michael Jordan.
I've got the best job in the world.
Well, ironically, the thing that made him unique and one of a kind is what ultimately got him fired. Okay, before we get to that, we can't sit here and give all the credit to Ray Clay. There was a man named Tommy Edwards who definitely has some of his fingerprints on this iconic introduction as well. Edwards was the PA announcer before Clay, and is somebody we should all thank for coming up with a few elements that made the Bulls intro what it is. First of all, Edwards was there in 1977 when the Bulls became the first team to bring down the lights during player introductions. In 1984, Edwards was the one who first suggested using the song Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project as the background music during the introductions.
The darkness, the sounds of a wild and raucous crowd, and the moody, menacing music that has become the spirit of Chicago Bulls basketball.
I didn't write the tune with any kind of sights on it ever being used for a sports anthem. It was the last thing I would have thought.
It's become a song that's synonymous with people being introduced. Schools of all ages are using it for their introductions to this very day. College, high school, middle school, grade school, you name it. All because Tommy Edwards had a vision and believed that the song would be perfect for the Bulls.
It was Tommy Edwards who first suggested using the Alan Parsons Project song leading up to his player introductions.
Michael Jordan!
They loved it, and Michael loved it, and so it was there ever since.
One more thing that Edwards is credited for is originating the famous signature phrase, "and now."
And now, the starting lineup for your Chicago Bulls.
Even though "and now" is Tommy Edwards' signature phrase, Ray Clay put his own stamp on the pre-game ritual when he took over, which of course revolved around the Michael Jordan part of the intro. This is what he made famous. Despite Edwards being the original architect behind the most famous basketball introduction in the world, it was Clay who would grow the routine into a worldwide phenomenon. And with Clay taking over for Edwards in the year 1990, it was definitely what you would call a right place at the right time situation for him, because he got to witness every championship they won in the 90s, and was probably going to continue being the Bulls PA announcer for many more years. That is, until something came out of his mouth that didn't quite sit well with the organization. We learned from The Last Dance that former Bulls general manager Jerry Krause grew increasingly jealous about the fact that Jordan seemed to pretty much get all the credit for the Bulls' success. So he decided to try and build a new dynasty just to prove to everyone that he can. Krause told Phil Jackson that the 97-98 season would be his last no matter what. And with Jordan previously stating that he wouldn't play without Jackson, it led to Jordan retiring as a result. Fast forward 3 years later, the Bulls were one of the worst teams in the league, while Jordan decided to unretire and play for the Washington Wizards instead of the Bulls, which I'm sure Jerry Krause must have been kinda salty about. MJ's relationship with Krause was already beyond repair, and this certainly didn't help. Nevertheless, Jordan returning to play for the Wizards was out of Krause's control. But what he could control, however, was how they introduced him when he first came back to Chicago as a member of the Washington Wizards. Here's where things get petty. You know how we already established that Jerry Krause wasn't afraid to get rid of anyone who got in his way? Well, that included PA announcer Ray Clay. Unfortunately, Clay was fired by the Bulls in 2002, and for a ridiculously petty reason. Jordan was set to return to Chicago as a member of the Washington Wizards, and Clay wanted to give the man his signature introduction. Team management said no and cut Clay loose at the end of that season. That's right, you heard that correctly. I know it's hard to believe, but this is actually true. Something as minuscule as that cost him his job. Now, here's how Clay ended up introducing Michael Jordan when he came back to Chicago for the first time as an opponent.
And forward from North Carolina, 6'6", Michael Jordan.
As you heard, that was clearly a watered-down version of what Clay wanted to do, essentially the same intro he did give Jordan during those title years with the Bulls. Management balked at that idea, ordering him to tone it down, which was the start of Clay's demise.
Here's Clay's explanation on what exactly happened.
I was interviewed by a print media journalist who had asked me how I planned on introducing Michael Jordan when he came back to the United Center. And I was honest, and I said nobody from the organization had talked to me and told me how they would like me to introduce him. And I said my feeling would be that everybody in the building wants to hear Michael Jordan introduced, as I've introduced him many times before with the full Michael Jordan introduction.
So clearly the Bulls organization, more specifically Jerry Krause, wanted to punish Clay for even suggesting such a thing by again firing him. But it looks like Clay ended up getting the last laugh in the end. Just because he was no longer able to perform that iconic introduction for the Bulls didn't mean he couldn't do it specifically for Jordan somewhere else, that being Philadelphia. The 76ers asked him to introduce Michael Jordan for his final NBA game in Philadelphia in 2003.
From North Carolina, at guard, 6'6", Michael Jordan.
All of a sudden, you know, the spotlight went on me, and it was like, from North Carolina. And all of a sudden you see Michael's face, and he's looking around, he's going, oh, what's going on? And somebody said, he's over there. And he turned and he looked at me and he went, oh my God, this is great.
It was great to see that there actually ended up being somewhat of a happy ending for Ray Clay, getting the privilege to at least be a part of MJ's last game. And I'm sure the Bulls felt some type of way about it when they watched this. They had absolutely no say in the matter this time, and they also can't stop him from performing at weddings if he so chooses. Interestingly, people actually hire him to introduce their wedding party.
Escorting a bridesmaid from the University of Kentucky, Gina Magellan.